It is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker this morning, Allan Kaufman. Allan is a friend, an active member of our Tuesday Club. You remember Allan, he spoke earlier this year as a volunteer ambassador for the Alliance for the Great Lakes. We learned a lot about what's going on, cautions that we have with that areas that we live. And remember last year when he shared his experiences as a volunteer diver at the Shedd Aquarium. A really great program. So what brings Allan to our podium today? After serving our country in Vietnam, Allan was Director of Environmental Health and Safety and Fleet Safety for Quest Diagnostics. You'll see some of his credentials there up on the screen. And he chaired the National Committee on Distracted Driving for the American Society of Safety Professionals and National Highway Safety Administration. Now, these are great credentials to cover a very important topic, especially for us seniors. In a talk that Allan is calling, "You Can't Drive Me to Distraction." We need to hear this. Please welcome Allan Kaufman.
Well, thank you, everybody, and it's a pleasure being here. Thank you to Ron for introducing me to the Tuesday Club. And we've had some wonderful programs here, and I hope this will inspire you. My goal here today for both you and on Zoom is to get maybe one person when you drive not to be distracted. And we'll talk a lot about that today. If I get two people, then I've exceeded my goal. So we're excited. So today, you may like me, especially if you're a good driver and you follow a lot of the rules of the road. But you may not like me so much if you're not such a good driver. You get to make that call. We're going to be talking about distracted driving. A lot of distracted driving is cell phone use, not all, and we'll get into some of the things that are not cell phone use. But a majority of our talk today is going to be about cell phone use. And distracted driving really does affect everyone. It affects you as the driver. It affects your passenger. It affects other people in other cars. It affects friends and loved ones. And we'll talk a little bit about some of those stories. Okay. Why should we care about distracted driving? Because motor vehicle incidents are one of the leading causes of death and injury in the United States and have been for 30 plus years. We'll talk about numbers a little bit on, but we know that there are certain diseases that are number one and number two, but motor vehicle incidents has been right up near the top for over 30 years. And don't think of it only as death, but think of injuries too, because we'll talk about how many injuries occur from motor vehicle incidents. According to the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, distracted driving is the second largest cause of fatal car accidents. Excessive speed is number one. DUI is number three. But number two, distracted driving. About 20 to 30% of all motor vehicle incidents injuries are a result of distracted driving. A lot of it ties together. And distracted driving accounts for about 30 to 40% of all accidents. Wow. It's a lot. Here's something that really surprised me. Over 40% of high school students admitted that they text or check their emails while they're driving. High school students. Think about that. Do you know some people who might be in that category? Well, who has a cell phone? I ask, we know that millions of people have cell phones. Lots of us, seniors, have cell phones. Almost everybody today has a cell phone. It's hard to go without one. If I ask that question, and I'm not going to have you raise your hand, I would say that almost everybody here and many of the people on Zoom would raise their hand if I asked you how many of you have a cell phone. It's important. People have cell phones today. That's how they communicate. Here's a little different part. Who uses a cell phone while operating a motor vehicle? A lot of people do. Think about the last time you were at a stoplight and the person in front of you didn't move, or you looked over to the side and you saw somebody with their cell phone to their ear. We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk a lot about that. So if I ask the question, how many of you use a cell phone while driving? I think I get a lot less hands go up, or a lot less people don't want to admit it because they know it's not safe. And that's what we're all about, safety. And here's an interesting fact for us at the North Shore Senior Center, that the senior population is growing rapidly. And because it is growing, seniors are becoming more electronically friendly. And because they're becoming more electronically friendly, they use cell phones. And a lot of them are starting to use cell phones while they drive, which is an unfortunate situation. Remember before I said about stories. How many people have stories? Here's a picture of a group, a small group of people who have been affected by cell phone use. Incidents, motor vehicle incidents, which has injured or unfortunately killed families, friends, and you may know some people who have had motor vehicle incidents due to a distracted driver. I'm going to give you one story that just happened not too long ago. This is Wisconsin State Senator Janet Bruley. She was involved in an incident. She is the state senator in Upper Wisconsin near Lake Superior, and she was pulling out of a beach location. She's 70 years old, and she pulled onto a highway, not seeing that there was a car. She wanted to go eastbound, and there was a car coming in the right lane, correct lane, going westbound, and she ran right into them. Unfortunately, these people who were from Pennsylvania, just visiting the Wisconsin area, Alyssa Ortman and her daughter were both killed. And the sad part is, if you read the bottom part of the slide, the Milwaukee Journal states that what Senator Bruley was actually doing was she was doing a phone interview online while driving her vehicle with the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel about the fall elections. Since this incident, which happened in July, she has retired from politics. I can understand why. It happens to a lot of people. There are a lot of stories out there. Just let's compare to 1 year from 2019 to 2020. The dark blue is 2019, the light blue is 2020. The first category is texting or emailing. You can see the significant increase. Checking your social media, another significant increase. Taking pictures and videos while you're driving, a more significant increase. And here's one that kind of surprised me. Shopping online. Shopping online, another significant increase. This is during the pandemic years. And people are out there driving around doing all these things. And we know from the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration that the numbers have increased from 2020 to 2021. So it keeps going up. So let's look at what people have and are doing. Wireless subscriptions, people who have cell phones. We have 250 plus million wireless subscriptions. We only have 228 million licensed drivers. So and I'll call it NHTSA from now on, instead of saying the whole National Highway Transportation Safety Administration. NHTSA says that at any time, day or night, they estimate that at least 650,000 people are on their cell phones while they're driving. Wow. Day or night. And you can see the breakdown underneath. And the two highlighted at the top, boomers and seniors, which we are a part of, is also drivers who admit to talking on their cell phones while driving. 83%. 83%. So we want to know why our accident rates are going up. Perfect example here. Distracted driving, again, one of the leading causes of crashes. But the interesting part on this slide is the bottom. 80% of crashes and 65% of near crashes involve some form of distracted driving. And the part here to keep in mind is not all near crashes are reported. So again, my colleagues at NHTSA think it's higher than 65%, much higher. And the distraction occurs within 3 seconds. That's the average. It takes only 3 seconds to have a vehicle collision when you're distracted. So here's what I want you to do, and you can do this at home too. If you have a cell phone, take it out. If you don't want to take it out, you can use your hand and pretend you have a keypad in your hand. And when I say go, I would like you to dial either your own number or your favorite number that you know. So either use your hand or use your own cell phone. You don't have to turn it on and actually dial, you can have it off, but just pretend like you're hitting that keypad. And please, those people on Zoom, go ahead and do this too. So here we go. Are you ready? Set, go. 1, 2, 3, stop. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Guess what you just did? In the 3 seconds that you were dialing, and by the way, did anybody finish their phone number? I'm betting not. It only took 3 seconds, and look at what you've done. You've run into the back of the school bus. Not fun. Not a nice thing. It takes you longer than 3 seconds to dial somebody's number. And when you're dialing that number, especially while you're driving, think about where your awareness is and what's going on. Think about pulling over to a safe location, stopping, now dialing the number, and then talk, and then putting your car and your phone conversation, putting your car back in drive and now going on. Not too many people want to do that, but that's the safe way. So in 3 seconds, you've just run off into the bus. So let's talk about how this all works, because it's important to understand it. When you start using your cell phone and you're driving, visually, you are taking your eyes off the road. You have to look down at your cell phone. If you have a console in the middle with the newer vehicles, that console, you have to look down at it also. Mechanically, if you're using a handheld cell phone or you're using your console in the middle, and it's not voice activated, you have one hand on the wheel and one hand off of the wheel. And here's the most important part. Whoops. Cognitively, your mind is off the road. Your mind is off of your driving. And that's where taking that focus away. Remember, 3 seconds, the bus. You hit the bus and it only took you 3 seconds. Cognitively, you're not thinking about what's going on in front of you. How many times have you been behind a car at a light, the lights turn green and the car is just sitting there? And finally, either you tap the horn or everybody goes, because the other driver is probably doing something on their phone and is not even aware that the light has turned green. I'm sure it's happened to a lot of you. This was a study done at Carnegie Mellon. Talks about brain activity. When you're driving and you have no brain activity, you can have no distractions, you can see amount of brain activity in the red. When you start talking on a cell phone, your brain activity actually reduces by about 37%. That is a lot. And what's happening is you are unaware of things going on around you. So here's an example I want you all to think about. You're sitting at home and you're watching your favorite show or the Bear game or something, and the phone rings. And it's your good friend or your relative, and you pick it up and you start talking. You start talking for 15, 20 minutes, right? And you put the phone down, you end your conversation, put the phone down, and what happens? You look at the TV and you have no idea what happened during that segment. Has that ever happened to anybody here? How about the score of the game? Especially like if it's a fast moving game, like say basketball or something. You're talking on the phone and the score jumps by 20 points and you go, how did that happen? Because your brain is trying to figure out what's most important for you, talking on the phone or watching TV. And it makes that decision. So what ends up happening is you miss what's going on TV. Or let's reverse it. You're watching your favorite Bear game and you're talking to somebody and your eye catches that Justin Fields throws a 60-yard pass for a touchdown. You go, oh, wow. And then you didn't hear what the person on the phone says. So what do you say? Oh, could you repeat that? I didn't hear you. Same situation, just reversing it. Your brain can't multitask. It's impossible. It can do one thing really well or a couple things not so well. They found that out in business a long time ago. So here's another little exercise I'm going to give you. I'm going to put up something on the screen. I'm going to give you 5 seconds to read it. Ready? Go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Anybody read the whole thing? Got one person who said they did. That's great. And I hope the people on Zoom were able to try and read it. But let's look at it carefully. You're 4 times more likely to have a road accident when you're on a mobile phone. It's hard to concentrate on 2 things at the same time. And if you try to read it line by line, you're 4 times, it's hard to, more likely to have, and so on. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It's hard to do 2 things at one time. Your brain doesn't want to switch back and forth. And you're driving your car or your SUV. And what are you doing when you're driving your vehicle? First of all, you're operating a heavy machinery. Cars, SUVs, 2,000 to 3,000 or more pounds. at high speeds. Take 35 miles an hour, which most people would not consider high speeds. But if you're driving, let's say down Willow Road, either east or west, you pick the direction, and it's 4 lanes, 2 in each direction, and there's 2 bikers in the right lane. At 35 miles an hour or even 30 miles an hour, if you can't change and move over and hit those people, it's going to create a lot of damage. Changing terrain and weather conditions. We see that all the time. They were just talking about Sunday here with the heavy rain Don was talking about. Calculating speeds and distances. No matter what road you're on in this area or the highways, changing speeds is a big deal because not everybody is going at the speed limit. In fact, probably nobody is. Responding to other drivers who want to do certain things and are being a little aggressive or cutting in and out. You have to respond to them while you're driving. Changing your car controls. This is an easy one, right? Too hot, want to make it a little cooler, turn on the air conditioning. Well, it's over here, so I got to lean over and maybe look at it, make sure I'm hitting the right button. Talking to other people in your vehicle, especially if they're in the back seat. Do you turn around? Think about talking to other people. You're watching a TV show or a movie, and the 2 people in the show or movie are driving along in the car, and the driver generally turns to the passenger, and they turn and keep their head at the passenger for maybe 4 or 5 seconds because they want a good shot of that situation. Well, when you turn and look at that passenger for 4 or 5 seconds, what's happening on the road in front of you? Does anybody know? And there's more things we could talk about, but we'll go on. So there's a few people here in the audience today. Tell me some distractions that you have seen. Just shout them out. You don't need the mic. Just a couple. Anybody? There you go, running in front of your car. Anybody else seen distractions on the road?
Cyclists.
I'm sorry, cyclists. Cyclists, good one. Accidents. Billboards. That's a great one. Who said billboards? Wonderful, because we're going to talk about that in just a second. Okay, so distractions on the road. What do you see? People putting on makeup, talking on the phone, maybe eating, reading a newspaper, and billboards. Thank you so much for that comment. Because this is becoming a really big distraction to people, especially here in the Chicago area. We now have electronic billboards. And with electronic billboards, the message changes while you're driving. Do you tend to look over to that, up and over to that billboard while you're driving down the road? I'll give you a cute story. It's not so cute. As it said in the beginning, I was the national chair for distracted driving for NHTSA. And I get a call one day in my office, and it's from the Assistant Secretary of Transportation. Ray LaHood was the Secretary of Transportation under Obama. And this was his assistant calling me and saying that there's a billboard west of O'Hare, and it's creating a lot of traffic incidents. And the secretary heard about it. And do you know anything about it? And I don't know anything about it. So I do some research and I find it's on York Road, which is just west of O'Hare. The speed limit on York Road is 40 miles an hour. And what happened was a Toyota dealer put a billboard up, and on the billboard, it had what you see at the bottom here, a QR code. And QR codes I didn't know anything about them, honestly. If you take your cell phone and take a picture of the QR code, all this information comes up. And his message was for the best Toyota deal in the city of Chicago and the surrounding areas, take a picture of this QR code. So here it's 40 miles an hour and people are slowing down to almost nothing to try and take this picture out their window of their car. And Secretary LaHood was really incensed about this. So later on, after I kind of told his assistant what it was all about, and I actually did a report on this in the Tribune, Secretary LaHood called the Toyota dealer and told them that they needed to get the sign down because it was causing all kinds of distractions and accidents. It was causing a lot of accidents on York Road, significantly higher than they had ever had before. And all was about people trying to take a picture with their cell phone out their window. Talk about distraction. They, needless to say, within days, they took that billboard down. So let's talk about, I said cell phones are a lot of what we talk about, but there's a lot of other distracted driving activities. Looking at something other than the road, off the road for more than 3 seconds. That is number one. Just looking away. Now, the rest of these are in no specific order. Talking to other passengers, adjusting vehicle controls, and we've talked about some of these: eating, using a cell phone, tending to children, backseat, reading emails and texts, grooming, work-related activities. And if you look real closely, this is a CDL 18-wheel truck driver. He's got his keyboard in his lap. He's got his screen where his hand is adjusting his screen so he can see it. And then to make it even a little more distracting, he's got his little friend in his lap. This is what's going on our roads today. Should we be concerned? Absolutely. And then I want to give you my all-time favorite. This is true. This is not made up. My all-time favorite is the Waffle King. Now look closely, and if you look in his rearview mirror, you can see his eyes are pointed down at his waffle iron, which is plugged into the old type of cigarette lighter, and he's making waffles in his car while he's driving. Distracting? I think he's my all-time favorite. So now I want you to look at this picture. This is a little more horrific picture than you've probably seen. And what do you think that the US public or you would do hypothetically if we were having one plane crash a week? Just one. Maybe even less than one. One every other week. What do you think the US public and you would do? I think some of you would probably think twice about getting on an airplane. Okay, so let's relate that. Let's look at these numbers. 42,500 plus. That's the number of fatalities we had in 2019. The numbers have been coming out slower because of all the pandemic stuff. And 2.6 million. So let's see what these really mean. 40,000 plus are the number of motor vehicles we have, deaths we have every year on our highways, and we have had it for over 30 years, which accounts to about 760 people a week. And this is just in the United States. Remember that plane crash picture I just showed you? If we were having one plane crash a week, 200 average plane today holds 200 to 250. So you say, most people would say, I don't want to fly anymore. But you're almost 4 times likely to have a fatality if you're going to get in your vehicle. And my guess is that everybody here is going to probably get in their vehicle and go home or go somewhere. after this. Think about it. Think about how dangerous it really is. And this plane crash is hypothetical. But you wouldn't fly again if it were real. The 2.6 number is a real number. That's the average number of injuries. Some are significant, some are not as significant. 7,000 a day. 7,000 injuries a day driving your vehicles. Some of you may have experienced some of this already. These numbers are significant. And yet, as distracted driving, which is the second leading cause of motor vehicle incidents, we still continue to do it and we won't put our cell phones down. I'm sorry for the screen up above, but it's the leading cause of death is what it says here. In the age group, motor vehicle incidents is leading cause of death in the age group 5 to 35. Drivers in their 20s are more likely to die in fatal distracted driving crashes, making up 27% of the fatalities. So now I want you to think about someone you might know in this age group. I have grandchildren. I know that they drive. I've got 4 right now that are driving. And wow. And the 5, don't forget, it's 5 to 35. You doesn't even have to be a driver. Our roads are dangerous, and we make them more dangerous every time we are distracted, whether it's cell phone use or something else. I used to have a McDonald's slide up here because what people would do, think about when you go into McDonald's, and I'm just using that, any fast food restaurant. You get up to the order, you place your order through the window, you move forward, you pay, you move forward, you get your food, and then you move out. Have you ever put your car in park or neutral? Probably not. You kept your foot on the brake. And then you get out and, oh, those fries smell really good. So now you start picking at the fries. We do that to ourselves. And it doesn't just happen in cars that we drive. Planes, trains, and we'll get to automobiles. The Jetstar plane pilot here in the first bullet point was landing in Singapore, had 250 people in his plane, and guess what happened? He was texting, and he never slowed his speed down as he was descending. And if you're coming in too fast, guess what's going to happen? You're going to crash. Luckily, he was able to fire up his engines and pull up and abort the landing, and he realized, but they know he was texting seconds before he was landing. And the other one, the second one, the pilots missed the Twin Cities by 150 miles. That was written up in a lot of papers and a lot of news. If you remember right, if you do remember the incident, the 2 pilots were working on their laptops. They were Southwest pilots. They were working on their laptop computers. Never even noticed that the FAA was calling them to tell them that you're off course by 150 miles. And finally, the co-pilot finished what he was doing, put his laptop down and said, oh, I think we're not near the Twin Cities. And then they got communication with the ground and they realized where they were, had to come all the way around. They were totally distracted. Trains. This is a Metrolink train in Los Angeles. The driver, the engineer, was texting about 20 seconds before the crash. He never saw the signals to slow down because there was a freight train in front of him that was actually coming near, and he was supposed to stop so the freight train could switch tracks. He never saw it. 25 people died, 135 people were injured. Texting 20 seconds before the crash. And if you know anything about trains, a train like this takes about 2 miles to stop fully. And automobiles or buses. Here was a bus driver on a private tour, hands-free, cell phone using, never saw the height requirement for his bus to cross this bridge. Luckily, nobody died, but they had some significant injuries. And you can see what the bus looks like. So it's not just people driving their cars. And then I always, when I talk to people, so a lot of people come up and say, well, I use a hand-free cell phone. It's legal here in Illinois. Yes, it is legal in many states, almost every state. And I don't have the problem of being distracted because I get both my hands on the wheel. Well, unfortunately, that's not really true. Because what happens is your reaction time is no different. We're using a hands-free or handheld cell phone. Your mind is trying to figure out what you want to do, and therefore, when you start using a hands-free cell phone, your mind is concentrating on the conversation, not on the road ahead of you. So remember, and this study has been repeated more than 20 times, and it always has the same results. Your reaction time is the same using a handheld versus a hand-free cell phone. And either one, when you're using a cell phone, it's like driving the length of a football field, almost blind, at 55 miles an hour. So my question is there anybody here that would like to drive down the Edens Expressway blindfolded at 55 miles an hour for half a mile? I don't see anybody that wants to do that. And I bet that the people at home, there's not too many people that want to drive down the Edens Expressway at 55 miles an hour. But that's what it's like when you're driving, hands-free, handheld, and you're distracted. We have something called inattention blindness, and I'm going to explain that to you. When you're driving, and I know at home you can't see me as well, but my hands are way out to my side, and this is your peripheral vision, like the slide shows. This is what you see when you're normally driving down the road. Your attention is on the road, and you're seeing a lot of things going on in front of you on both sides. But unfortunately, once you start being distracted using your cell phone, you miss things. And take a good look at this picture because we're going to see it again. Motorcycle coming down the road to the car. The car's pulling out, never sees the motorcycle. Here's what happens. I know the little blue boxes are very hard to see. I hope you can see them. This was a study done by the Toronto, Canada Transportation Administration. And you can see the wide box when you're not using a cell phone. And then when you see when you're using your cell phone, you see that little box. It's on my right. I don't know on Zoom which side it's on. But think about that little box. Look at that little box. Okay, here comes a ball rolling across the street. When do you see the ball? More importantly, when do you see what's coming out into the street to get the ball? When it's right in front of you. Unfortunately, that may be too late. Remember that motorcycle and the car. When do you see the motorcycle, if you do at all? And if you read the bottom here, what happened here, the motorcycle was coming down excessive speed at 85 miles an hour, but the driver pulled out, never saw the motorcycle. All kinds of witnesses on this. Was talking on their cell phone. The motorcycle came right in, and you can see it. There's the wheel. I don't know if there's a wheel here. The motorcycle and the motorcycle rider went right into the passenger side of the vehicle. The passenger, the motorcycle rider, and the driver were all killed. Never saw it. Just pulled right out. That's why I said that last graphic was so important. And what do we do now? What are our manufacturers doing now? Because it creates more revenue for them, they're putting all kinds of things right in the console of your new car. You can do all kinds of things. They charge you more for the car because then they might even charge you for the service. And you can make phone calls. You can do all kinds of stuff. You can check your Facebook, check your Twitter, and check your emails right from your car. Right in the middle. There it is. And then the manufacturers will say, well, if you check your email, it will read your email verbally back to you. Guess what? It's still a distraction. It's like using a hands-free cell phone. And look at this. This is a new service that General Motors is putting in now. It's called the Marketplace. And you can do all kinds of shopping from your car through your console. Now, if you pull over and stop your vehicle and put it in park and do this, that's great. But I don't think too many people are really going to do that. Most are going to be driving, want to stop at Starbucks, so they'll hit the button, talk to Starbucks, I need a cup, latte or whatever, and I'll be there in 5 minutes to pick it up. They're actually making you shop in your car, giving you that opportunity. And let's talk about us as seniors, because I'm in this group too. We have a lot of other distractions. Mobility. We can't always grip the wheel as well as we want. We can't always put our foot on the brake and the gas pedal as well as we want. Day and night vision. Don was talking about they're not eating out because people don't want to drive in the dark. A lot of us have night vision problems and sometimes day vision problems. Hearing. We miss cues when we're driving if we can't hear well. There are cues, definite cues when you're driving that you hear. And the biggest one now is reaction time. Unfortunately, we have to admit that our reaction time is slowing down. We can't play goalie for the Blackhawks this year because our reaction time is a little too slow to stop a 100-mile-an-hour puck. So think about it when you're driving. Are you leaving more distance between you and the vehicle in front of you? Health is a distraction. What about aggressive drivers? Do you think they're a distraction? Absolutely. AAA now states that 56% of fatal car crashes are from aggressive driving, and we have seen a dramatic uptake in aggressive driving since the pandemic, a dramatic increase. And I don't know why, but people, maybe they're angry because they couldn't get out or they were confined. But now when they get on the road, they're really aggressive. 80% of drivers admit to some sort of aggressive driving, 80%. And again, there has been a big increase in the past 3 years. So think about aggressive drivers and are they a distraction to you? that driver who's switching lanes every 10 feet to move down the road, is he a distraction or she a distraction to you? So what do drivers do to get you upset? I'm sure there's lots of things. Maybe some of these, and these aren't all of them. These are just some of them that you see up here, and I'm not going to read them to you. You can see them. But these are some of the aggressive tactics of some drivers. And now we know that road rage is really becoming a big thing on a lot of expressways, especially here in Chicago area. So my question is, what do you do? Do you do any of these things? If you do, you might think about it. You may be a distraction for another driver. And the newest one, the distracted pedestrian. And especially if you drive in downtown Chicago, but not exclusively. People are walking the streets, talking on their cell phones. They have no awareness of what's going on. Look at this sign. It says, "Don't walk." And yet she's crossing the street on her cell phone. If you're driving and you have the green light, is she going to be a distraction for you? Yeah. And again, according to the National Safety Council, and we don't get a lot of the reports because a lot of near misses never are reported to the emergency rooms or to the police department. So we know it's much larger than we think, that it's growing in leaps and bounds. And like I said, if you go downtown Chicago, especially before the pandemic, when so many people were walking around, everybody was on their cell phone and nobody watched the signals, and they said, you know, the cars will stop for me. Not always. Okay, so now it's quiz time. You don't have to take out paper and pencil, and the people at home can do this too. I'm going to give you a little quiz and you see if you can come up with the right answer. Texting or talking on a cell phone while driving 55 miles an hour is like driving blindfolded the length of a football field. Correct. At any moment, day or night, how many people in the US are using cell phones, electronic devices while driving? 650,000. Using your cell phone while driving is much safer when you use a hands-free device. Well, I'm glad you're all getting this. This is wonderful. It is false. No difference. How much more likely are you to get in an accident when texting on your cell phone? 23%. And notice on the bottom, I gave you where this information comes from, just so you know I'm not making it up. More than half of all fatal distracted driving accidents involve drivers in their 20s. That is false. Drivers in their 20s are more likely to die in fatal distracted driving crashes, making up 27% of such fatalities. So just worded a little differently. Distracted walking accidents have, in the past 7 years, quadrupled. This is a lot of the references where I get my material for this particular, because it's important that you know that this is reputable organizations that are giving us these statistics and this information. So if anybody is interested and needs it, I'm happy to send it out. I'll be happy to take some questions and maybe I'll give you some answers, not sure. But the most important part, let's be careful and let's be safe out there. Please drive safely. And again, if I have changed one person, I've met my goal. Thank you.
Wonderful presentation, Alan. We'll take some questions from the auditorium first, then we have some from Zoom.
Okay.
What is your opinion of self-driving cars?
Right now, I don't have a high opinion of them because most of the research that has been done and when they have this stuff is they're not driving as well as drivers who can react very quickly to a situation. In fact, there was an Uber incident where they had somebody in the vehicle while the car was self-driving, and the car got into an incident, pretty severe one. And what they found was the Uber person in the vehicle who was not driving, it was self-driven, was on their cell phone. So.
Yeah, thank you for a great presentation. I have two questions. The first one is, having seen the moment. The safety gadgets that we see are being built into cars now, with automatic stopping and lane preservation and things. Are those as good as advertised? The second one is there any value or difference in people that have had remedial driving imposed on them after a traffic incident, or high school kids that have had driver's ed, which is almost universal coming through kids coming through high school, and that influence on their driving record?
Well, let's go back to the first one. I didn't get the last part of, could you hand them back the last part of your first question?
Yeah, the question is these safety gadgets that are being built into cars,
Right.
automatic stop and lane preservation and things like that. Are they as good as advertised?
He asked if the safety gadgets that are built into cars, are they good? Absolutely. Absolutely. They tell you if there's a car on the side of you, if you want to switch lanes. They tell you if you're coming up too close to another car. There are safety gadgets that they're putting in now that have been approved by the National Safety Council and also the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration. So those are good things, and the more safety that can help you as a driver, go for it. Your other question was about driver's ed, right? And having been a fleet safety manager, I had about 2,000 vehicles under me and about 3,000 drivers. And we had remedial training all the time. Drivers had to go through it every 6 months. And if they were caught using a cell phone or something when they were driving, they were immediately suspended. They had two chances. The first time they were suspended for 2 weeks without pay. The second time they were let go because those were the rules. And we didn't want, not only was they a threat to other people, but they're carrying valuable medical samples of people who've given blood or urine or whatever for testing. And if they get in an accident, those samples are all ruined. So training is good. In high school, the people who do the driver training are certified. I'm not as a big fan of some of those people because I've heard stories from my grandkids, but at least they're making the kids practice and train. And I know we all, if we had kids, our own children, we were out there on the roads with them or in the parking lots training them and helping them. So
how do you deal with dozing off?
how do I deal with dozing off? Drowsy drivers. Yes. When I was at the fleet safety manager, a majority of our drivers drive at night. They drive a late shift from about 8 o'clock to 3 or 4 in the morning. And drowsy drivers are a problem. As another driver, you can't do much about it, but if you're the person who's dozing off, what we highly suggest is that you find a safe place to pull off the road and take a 20 to 30 minute power nap and actually put your car, turn it off and take your nap. And I guarantee you, if you will take a 20 to 30 minute power nap, you will be refreshed enough to drive on.
I noticed in your list of aggressive driving
driving under the influence.
Yes.
How significant is that in terms of the percentage of crashes? And is it increasing or going down?
No, it's increasing. Actually, DUIs are increasing, have been increasing. It is significant. Don's question was about DUIs and are they a significant factor on the road? Think about the time you were driving and you felt that there was somebody in front of you who might have been under the influence and their car was moving back and forth, swaying. What did you want to do? You wanted to get away from that driver because now they're a distraction to you, plus a potential motor vehicle incident to you. So yes, DUIs are still a big part of it. And with the pandemic and things that ending, more people are going out and they are drinking and they're on the road.
As we're older, we're supposedly wiser. And kids have greater instincts and have better, as you pointed out to us, they have greater reaction time. So who's at greater risk with respect to distracted? Is it the cell phones and the kids, or is it us seniors because of the combination of age and reaction time? Or are we both at risk?
Well, actually, they're both at risk because for different reasons. The young people, as probably you all know, when they are so tied in to their phones, they have become their part of their body almost. And so they can't put it down. They can't put it in their pocket. The young boy driving no-handed and texting while that's very common today with young people. And I'm saying young people up until maybe the millennials, 30s. They are very tied in to it. So as a distraction and as a hazard to everybody else, yes, it's a much bigger hazard. The older people are becoming more attuned to electronics because we have to, because it's part of the society now. And what's happening is we don't have the reaction time. So when we use our cell phones while we're driving, we're at greater risk because it takes us a little bit longer to step on the brake. And that 3 seconds running into the bus, for us, it may be 2 seconds. But both generations are at significant risk when they're distracted like that.
Thank you, Ellen. We're all.
And I have one more comment. Go home and talk to your family and friends. If you know that they are using a mobile device, try and get them to stop. Tell them how important it is and how dangerous it is, not only to them, but to other people in their car and other people around them and other vehicles or pedestrians. It is really important that they understand that this is a real hazard and you need to be aware. Thank you.
Thank you again, Allan.